Welcome. In this video I will explore the setting of a geopolitical simulation I am going to start on this channel. The simulation is about a high fantasy world called Omnia, which I made up and I'm going to use to conduct this experiment in. This video is an introduction to the setting, so a lot of information will therefore be thrown into you. However, the farther we go in the series and the more we explore this world, the clearer everything will get. The simulation is really about geopolitics, but in a different world than our own. For that we first need to know what exactly geopolitics is. When you look geopolitics up on Google, the first thing that appears is from Oxford Languages, and that it means relating to politics, especially international relations, as influenced by geographical factors. In other words, foreign affairs between countries and peoples on a macro scale. I will simulate a fantasy world filled with different mythical races and how the countries and peoples in that world view each other, and how they do diplomacy and war. For this, each country needs its own culture, history, economics, and geography. And from there simulate a natural way in how they would act on the world stage. For example, if country A would constantly invade country B throughout history, how would the culture of country B evolve, and how would they see other countries stand on their borders? Would they seek allies that could help them, or try to invade country C, like how A did to them? On this channel, I will produce videos on what the geopolitical situation is for the countries in Omnia. It is supposed to be a creative experiment, and hopefully it might help others in their world building and figuring out the politics between different peoples in different locations. Then, what is Omnia? I will give an introduction as to what it is, followed by a summary of its geography and its history. Omnia is a made-up high fantasy world. High fantasy meaning that fantastical elements like magic and mythical creatures are present everywhere, and a common sight throughout the world. The word Omnia comes from Latin, meaning everything. Omnia originally started as a homebrew world for Dungeons & Dragons, but has since evolved into, well, this. But therefore many aspects of Dungeons & Dragons can still be found back in Omnia, though notably changed. It also takes inspiration from many other fantasy worlds, like Tolkien's Legendarium, Warhammer Fantasy, Dark Souls, and Riot Games' Runeterra, but also of our own real-world mythology. Many places in Omnia are also inspired by real-life cultures and countries, though of course are not representative of them. It smooshes all of that inspiration together into this coherent world, where it all plays with the same rules. Though the rule of cool definitely applies in Omnia. Most things are there because I find it awesome. Because it is an imaginary world, it is also void of a lot of things I do not like. Of course, this can all be explained with in-universe reasoning. It also changes a few basic societal things as compared to the real world. For example, in all-world patriarchal societies throughout history were the norm. In Omnia this is much less the case, as the existence of magic closes the gap of pure individual muscle power that is apparent in the biological difference between men and women. With that said and out of the way, I welcome you to Omnia. A world populated by many different peoples and races, mythical creatures and mystical anomalies. Omnia entails everything, but the ones who made it look like it how it is today are the gods, or the Omni. They are powerful beings that came from the stars to this world and shaped it to their vision, but suddenly left, never to be seen again, though their legacy lives on. The Omnic races that were created by them, like the dragons, elves, humans and many others, dominate the world today. We'll be seeing how these races act with each other, and how they treat non-Omnic races, and vice versa. Geography. The world is divided into 5 continents. The twin continents of Occidacia and Auradacia, the southern continent of Ambriel, the continent of islands, Amaraf, and the Arctic continent of Faus. Of these continents, the twin continents are the ones in the center of attention, as these are the ones that are inhabited by humans. The others are inhabited by different species of humanoids. For Amriel, there's the Asians, an aggressive and bony looking humanoids which don't have lips and have carnivorous teeth. For Amareth, that is the Amarethians, tall people with slightly longer limbs and flexible bodies that are experts in controlling outer mana and shaping different elements of nature to their will. Oh yeah, mana. That is also very important. Mana is a force that permeates through everything and is all around in Omnia. It is found in people, in animals, in plant life, in rocks, in the air, in the world itself, and it flows freely through all. It is kind of like a phenomenon of energy in all worlds, but different. Or like the mystical side of the Force in Star Wars, in that it is all around you, and you can manipulate it however you want, but different. Mana can be shaped and controlled, and that is essentially what a mage is in Omnia. By knowing how mana flows, one can exploit it to let it change the world around them. And this is done by arranging the streams of mana in a certain pattern. I'll do a deep dive of mana in Omnia in a future video. History. Omnia has a long history, as the Omni came to this world more than 25,000 years ago, though humanity has only existed for 4200, as they are one of the last races created by the Omni. The timeline can largely be divided in two: the time before the Omni and the time after their arrival. The time after is further divided into 4 eras. The first one being the era of dragons, which lasted for 10,000 years. The second is the era of elves, which lasted for 6,000. The third, the era of men, which lasted for 4,000. And the last one, and the one the world is in right now, is the era of devils. The era of devils began with the end of the Great Daemon Invasion, with the banishment of the Daemon monarchy, which is now 213 years ago. As such, it is now the year 213 PT, post-Tumultus. Each era is marked by the arrival of a new race, which would take the forefront on the world stage. The Great Daemon Invasion was a 100-year war that saw devils and demons, collectively known as daemons, invading the overworld and conquering much of the northern part of the Octadacian continent. They were halted in their advance with the Tumons Mountains acting as a natural barrier, and the countries in the south employing a guerrilla-style war tactic inside of this mountain range, making use of the many choke points that existed here. Now, 200 years later, after the events of the Daemon Invasion, many nations have forgotten the cruelty of war, and the world is once again stirring. The next cataclysm is coming. So that is the setting of Omnia, and what we are going to look at with this geopolitical simulation. The simulation is for fun. It doesn't represent anything, it doesn't represent our real world, it is purely a creative experiment. Thank you for watching, and in the next video we will be taking a look at the geopolitical situation of our first country, Eduvia.